Good evening on this November 4th. I can't believe it's already November and it feels cooler, although I guess we might get to enjoy a little bit of weather, some good weather coming up. Anyhow, if this is your first time joining, my name's Laura Goldman and I am a registered dietitian working with Premier Weight Loss. And I've been hosting these weekly webinars for almost a year now, I would say. And 'tis the season to start thinking about holiday eating, holiday dinners, and how we can work around that when we're taking GLP-1 medications. I know this can be a stressful time, and hopefully we can find some ways to navigate holiday eating. And so the theme of this week and this evening is gratitude, not guilt, reframing holiday eating with a positive mindset. So a few weeks out from Thanksgiving, and this is the perfect theme to stick with. However, as always, every week I like to start with the mantra of remember, it's the quality of your calories that matters. And while that doesn't mean that every single thing you eat has to be an A+ perfect choice, especially during the holidays when I know that we all have certain treats we like, it's still good to remember that the overall quality of your calories matters. So if you can do well 90% of the time, even 80% of the time, you're on the right track. This evening, we'll cover briefly the harm of guilt, but also the power of gratitude. Also, a few strategies to feel ready for holiday events. They work throughout the year, and so they might seem a bit familiar, but hopefully there might be a new approach there. Also, specifically in terms of strategies, I wanted to touch on dealing with that social pressure that maybe you experience from people trying to eat one more slice or have one more of something. Very briefly, I'll also talk about the GLP-1 factors to consider. Again, this is going to be probably familiar for you, but again, just a reminder for any potential travel you might have. At the very end, I'll talk about a few goals that maybe you'd want to set for yourself for the week. You can pick one and see if that helps. And as always, I like to leave some time at the end for any questions you have. Feel free to hit that question button in the bottom left hand of your screen, and I'll be happy to answer questions about this topic or any nutrition-related topic that might come to mind. To start out, why guilt doesn't work, because I think many of us do have a habit of feeling guilty about food. And while I was reading some research articles about guilt, there was a differentiation in the terms guilt and shame. And guilt is sort of a momentary feeling of I made a bad choice. I ate ice cream and I feel terrible about it, for example. Whereas shame is more of an overarching feeling of I am bad. And it's my personal opinion. I couldn't professionally locate it necessarily in time, but it's my personal opinion that chronic feelings of guilt over food or over anything, most likely, can lead to this overarching sense of shame. And shame does, based on some studies, especially seem to be related, to more episodes of overeating, less physical activity, and essentially undoing any type of progress you're wanting to make. Also, with guilt and shame, there seems to be a less inhibition over food choices and a little more susceptible to feelings of hunger or feelings of cravings and giving into those more easily, which then can sort of cycle that shame and guilt feeling because you've now made a choice that you feel badly about, and to comfort oneself, it might be another choice that you feel badly about. And thinking about this, you do kind of wonder, what is it about food that can make us feel guilty? Where did these relationships come from? I think, unfortunately, there is a huge diet culture nationally, internationally as well, and diet culture involves various people assigning rules or values to food. So this food is good and healthy, this food is bad and unhealthy. And If you subscribe to one of those types of diet culture rules and regulations, then you feel that guilt when maybe you've broken those rules, or maybe you've assigned rules yourself versus following someone who's made up some rules. But remember, ask yourself, who is making these rules? Do these values matter, or are these arbitrary assignments given by people? There are some people who say only raw food is good, for example, which is something I would disagree with completely. Moving on to the power of gratitude, of course. So on the other side of things, the other side of the coin here, interestingly enough, and I'm sure there might be more studies coming along, we know that gratitude seems to help with overall feelings of health. And there was a study done where participants, adolescents really, some students, were challenged to write gratitude letters, and it didn't have to be food related. It was about thanking someone for helping them in some area of their life. And it seemed to show over time that practicing this gratitude led to generally healthier eating overall. Also, gratitude and having a life where we're feeling thankful, and again, 'tis the season, where we're feeling thankful for not just food, but for others and for the good going on in our lives, leads to more self-compassion, and then we are less likely to be derailed by any slight setback from eating. So if we have a little day of indulgence, like you might expect at certain holiday events, we know that we can get right back on that horse and get restarted without losing much, if any, ground over time. So to approach the holiday events, which not all of these have to do about gratitude, but I wanted to start out guilt and gratitude because we want to approach the holiday event with a feeling of gratitude. But what are some ways that we can also keep the focus on healthy eating and reaching our goals overall? Firstly, try your best not to skip meals that day of, or maybe the day before, to sort of save up for the big meal that you may have. Because as you may know, these medications can make you feel fuller much faster. And so even if you haven't eaten for most of the day, say, where you might have before, it's still pretty likely you're going to fill up very quickly, and then you'll be at a very, very severe calorie deficit. So it's okay to eat during the day, just keep it in reasonable portions. And also, since we haven't gone to that holiday event yet, think ahead, plan ahead, ask yourself questions about, if you know where you're going, if you know what to expect, ask yourself, what am I most looking forward to? What's the entree or the meal or the dessert that you want to eat? I'm sure you may have a family member who makes a famous pie or something like that, or some friends who you can expect that they're going to bring something delicious over. And so you have every right to look forward to that and eat that. So then also ask yourself, well, what can I limit? What can I pass on? Do I need the cranberry jelly? Probably not. And that way you can feel better about the indulgences that you most are looking forward to, and so you don't miss out on them. You also do want to think about protein, because if turkey isn't your thing, I know some people aren't really the biggest fans of turkey, although I'm a fan. Ask yourself where you may get it. Is it going to be anywhere else where there'll be other sides that have a protein-containing food? If not, perhaps preparing with a snack ahead of time so you don't feel like you've lost out. Or if there's deviled eggs, that could be something that would be your protein to have. Just remember there's about 7 grams of protein for every 1 egg, and you can keep that in mind as a quick little calculator in your mind. And even though I'm talking about some strategies and some ways to make healthy choices, do set expectations for yourself and recognize that we're not looking for perfect. It's not necessary to hit perfect during a big event or a big meal. It's not necessary to hit perfect most any time. As long as we're doing well and hitting our, trying to meet our health goals and choose options that align with those goals most of the time, we can accept when we're not going to be hitting it. During the meal, there are a few other strategies that you can focus on. Remember that if you have sort of a buffet style, or if you're able to choose what you want when passing things around, think of those order of choices, the preferred order to have the foods. So protein first, if you can find it there. Non-starchy vegetables next would be ideal. And then smaller portions of some of your favorite foods. I know what my brother-in-law loves mashed potatoes, and he eats a level that surprises, I think, almost everyone, and it has become a bit of a family joke. So he's welcome to enjoy them, but just remember that it is one of those things where you still want to be careful, because mashed potatoes, while they're delicious, won't give you all of the nutrients we're looking for. So you don't want to necessarily fill up on those. But remember your indulgences and pick carefully. So if you're like my brother-in-law and you love mashed potatoes and that's your absolute favorite, save room on the plate for that and save room for yourself. Don't fill up on the so-so or 2 out of 5 star items and then miss out on what you enjoy. Really allow yourself to pick what's your top 5, if you will. And also during the meal, or during just the time that you're around where the meal would be served, emphasize spending time with your loved ones and your friends, and try to be away from the food spread, as I put here. Oftentimes the kitchen is where the action is and where people like to congregate, but that's also an area where it's very easy to pick food throughout and sort of pick off of plates as things go on. If there's a way to take yourself away from that situation, if you know that's a common temptation, go into a living room or outside if your friends and family are around, and have a chance to spend time there instead. We also want to think about after the meal, if you're still in, say, the house or the location, consider some level of physical activity, if that works for you. Going for a walk after eating, or if there's some shopping to be done. If you are into sports and are coordinated enough, unlike myself, playing a touch football with the family can get you active, and again can get you away from the thinking of food, but also help with digestion, overall health. And remind yourself that this is just one day. Maybe you didn't get much physical activity, but you do normally, or you felt like maybe you overindulged on pumpkin pie. Most people aren't eating pumpkin pie every day, and so this is one day out of 365, and you can still reach your health goals as time goes on. And remind yourself that we can return to normal, go back to the normal patterns the very next day. This is when I wanted to touch on social pressure, or people you may hear be called the food pushers. And perhaps you're familiar with that. I know I am. And it's something that I think can inspire a lot of feelings of stress and potentially almost agitation, annoyance. And it's hard to answer completely why some people want to push food. There are quite a few reasons out there. We know that sometimes it is simply cultural, and it's within certain cultures to offer food as a sign of, welcoming. It's also for many people a bit of a love language, if you will. And people love to cook for others and love to share their cooking with others. And there might be a pressure internally even that you don't want to offend someone or hurt their feelings when you know that this is what they're working to do. I think, though, also there are many people out there where you might even see, I saw in an article the phrase, "Oh, you're still on that stupid diet." And I think there are many people who say that or push food to essentially feel better about their own choices. I've had people tell me directly, if they know that I'm a dietitian, if they see me eat a dessert, then they feel better about eating a dessert themselves. And so sometimes there may be people trying to push more food, more dessert, so they can feel welcome to have their second serving as well. And other people may simply be jealous. It does depend on the person. But remind yourself that you can say no, and it's easy. Well, it may not be easy, but it's easy to try and find some phrases that allow grace so you don't come across as rude. For example, you could say, "It looks delicious, but I'm full right now." And you could also say, "I'm already full, but I'd love to take it home with me. Do you have a way that I can carry it home because I want to enjoy it?" And just like saying that you're full, you can say, "Please, maybe later. I know it's delicious and I want to enjoy it fully." There are a variety of other ways to phrase these ways to let people down and let them down easily. And I wanted to just give you a few options there to try out. But do remember, you do not have to explain yourself. Nobody really needs to know your exact reason why you might be declining second servings. That's personal, that's your own reasons, and you shouldn't feel obligated or you don't owe any explanations to anybody. Moving on to the medications themselves. And these are just a few factors to consider since travel may be in the agenda for you, or just some things to remind yourself of with these medicines. Firstly, timing. So some people take this medication every Sunday, sometimes Wednesdays. When do you take it? Do you know if you'll have it the day before, or will it be days before? For many people, that can affect their appetite. And so perhaps you don't want to have too much of an appetite, so you could talk to your provider about taking it closer to the day. Or maybe you want to feel like you have more of an appetite or aren't experiencing side effects. Can you move that injection to a different day? And also ask yourself, if you're traveling, if you need to pack any extra, or consider the way to store it properly so it's still effective. Also, thinking about side effects. Remember, early satiety is very common, and so aim for those nutrient-dense foods whenever you can, because while I know that you can't expect a perfect plate, if you can focus on some of the nutrient-dense foods, you'll know that you're getting some quality in those calories. Also, with nausea, since that can be very common, just remember, since some of the foods made for Thanksgiving or even, the Christmas holidays, Hanukkah, there are greasy, heavy foods, and those tend to be a little more uncomfortable or lead to more nausea. So be aware, be prepared ahead of time. And finally, hydration is very, very important. It's easy to forget. It's easy to not feel thirst. And when we're in the midst of activity, that's not what we're thinking about is staying hydrated. But make sure to sip on fluids throughout the day, because that's going to make you feel better overall, and it's going to be overall beneficial for your health. We're coming here near the tail end, and so I wanted to give a few examples of some goals that you could challenge yourself with for the next week. You only have to pick one, but you can pick all four also. The first, because this is also one of the newer goals, because it's related directly to this topic, is think about starting a gratitude journal. And one way to do that is to list 3 things that you're grateful for each day. And it doesn't have to be food related at all. Or write out 3 things that went well for you. And if that has to involve your health, that's great. You can talk about that. Today I went for that walk that I've meant to for a long time. If you can get into that practice, at least for this next week, since that's the challenge, then you might get that feeling of gratitude, and you'll also have a list prepared for if people ask what you're grateful for or thankful for on Thanksgiving, you'll be ready to go. Secondly, try to do a game plan. We're far out enough from most events right now where you can think ahead and figure out how you want to approach eating at each place. If you know that a few events are coming up, do you know what's going to be served? Do you know where the temptations will lie? and you can start to prepare yourself ahead of time. Also, protein first mindset. I know probably from the very beginning when you've started working with Premier Weight Loss or even before, this protein topic has been hammered home, but I know it is very hard for some people to consider that or make that a priority. So here's a new opportunity to do that just for this next week, is try to really keep that at the front of your mind, and that will make it easier as time goes on. Finally, I don't talk about exercise too very often, but it is an important part of our overall health and health goals. And so getting some movement, if that's appropriate for you, add in 15 minutes of physical activity just 3 times this week, if you can. I know time is very limited and the weather nowadays makes it a little bit harder, but if you can get in 15 extra minutes 3 times this week or more, then that's already going to be helping move you again towards some of your health goals. To wrap this up in a nice little bow, just remember that gratitude is not just for Thanksgiving. It can be beneficial for you year round, and this is just the time to get that at the front of the mind if you haven't already. Also remember that even though we talk about eating healthy and meeting your health goals, I think it's important to recognize that holiday events, it does not mean that you still have to feel overly restricted or guilty about your choices. Food should taste good, and you should allow yourself to enjoy food. Just enjoy very mindfully. Remember to prepare yourself for any food pushers that you may encounter, if that's something that's common in your experience, so that you can sort of come up with some dialogues or some ways to respond with grace. And remember, you can enjoy this season and still reach your goals. It's not about being perfect, it's about making progress over time. And we've come to the end, but I did want to, especially since there were a few specialized areas that we talked about, here's a list of some of my sources. And now I leave this open for questions. If you have any questions about this topic or others, now is your chance. Feel free to hit that question button, and you can choose to be anonymous if you'd like. Otherwise, if your name is up, I might say it out loud just so you know I'm addressing your question. So I'll be quiet here for just a moment. All right. Well, with that, I think that ends our webinar for the evening, but I hope you got something out of this. And if you do have questions that come up later, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Premier Weight Loss staff. They can get you in touch with me. They can also likely help answer your questions. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. And I also hope to see you in the next one. Bye.